Okay, yeah, welcome back everyone to our next session of the UCL InfoSec Research Seminar. And today it's my great pleasure to welcome Arthur Gervais, who is an expert in cybersecurity topics and in particular worked for a long time on blockchain research. And today we'll see about one of his latest works, where he will tell us everything about what flash loans are, why they are fun, and how you can profit from them. Arthur, please go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Philip, for the kind intro, and thanks for having me. So let's just make a very simple introduction example. So we have here two parties, a bit more senior guy. Let's call him Bart, and we have here a junior guy. Let's call him Bob. And well, Bob has a passion. He likes to do music. We don't know what kind of music, but he likes to buy this turntable to actually compose some music. Now, problem is he doesn't have any money to buy this expensive turntable that's so digital and so new. And what he could do, well, he can ask for credit from Bart. And credit is a fundamental component of our economy. So I can really recommend you watching this video from Ray Dalio, how the economic machine works. It's one of the best YouTube videos I'm aware of. And within this video, he explains that there are three things that you can superpose. There's the productivity growth, typically measured in GDP of a society. Then you have short-term debt cycles, and you have long-term debt cycles. And when you superpose them, you kind of get something like this. So on the x-axis, you have time. On the y-axis, you have GDP. And I mean, it looks like if the productivity grows, then basically, yeah, this is kind of the curve that you could follow, right? But you can see here that there's some events where like the growth is actually deteriorating quite a bit. And this is when people have to pay back the debt, right? So a credit or a debt allows you to, for a short period of time, to have kind of like a boost, in a sense, a financial boost that allows you to produce more products, sell more music, for example, and outgrow maybe your competition. But eventually, you have to pay it back, right? So there's no such thing as something growing to the sky. So what could possibly go wrong? Well, somebody could go bankrupt, right, by not being able to pay back the debt. Now, this brings us to the interesting question: is it possible? So, can Bart grant a loan to Bob without the risk of Bob defaulting on the debt? So, defaulting means the risk that Bob cannot pay back the debt to Bart, including the interest payments that might have accrued over time. So in the beautiful cryptocurrency world, this concept is actually possible. This is not something that we're aware was possible in the traditional economy, because no matter how small the loan, no matter how short-lived the loan is, there's always a risk that the borrower might default. But in smart contract-based programs, you can basically take so-called flash loans, and the lender is guaranteed that the borrower will pay back. So how does that work? Well, on the left side here, you have a pot of money. You can think of it like a pool of assets. And in the first step, you call a contract, you call a function of this pool that tells you, I want to take out some money. Then with this loan, you can do whatever you're pleased to do. And eventually you pay it back, plus some interests on this particular loan. So that's the high level. Now, if you just look a bit more technically, it's still very high level, but just on the technical side, it's basically having a smart contract pool that accumulates assets from different entities, and they are typically called liquidity providers. They can add a liquidity of an asset X. And then there's the liquidity taker, or the borrower. He takes a flash loan, and he repays the flash loan by the end of an atomic blockchain transaction, plus a fee to the smart contract pool, so the interest fees. Now, why is this possible? Well, it's because if the borrower here would not pay back the loan by the end of the transaction, then the smart contract can fail the execution of the transaction. If you fail the execution of a transaction in smart contract enabled blockchains, then you do not commit the state changes that occur through that transaction on the blockchain. So it's kind of like you revert the execution towards the state where the loan was never taken. So in essence, if a flash loan is not paid back, it's as if the loan was never granted. So there are a few flash loan pools out there that you can everybody can actually take money from. Last time I looked, Uniswap was the biggest with about $2 billion US. Well, that's not a small amount, right? But you have to pay a 0.3% interest fee on the flash loan. Aave, similar size, similar fees. DYDX, quite smaller, but it has a constant fee of 1 way, which is the smallest denomination of an ether, so it's basically for free. Now, yeah, these like some of you that are more familiar with returns and so on of debts, 0.3% on a flash loan, which is kind of an instantaneous loan, is quite high, right? If you extrapolate this over a year, the annual percentage yield can grow quite a lot. So why would you use flash loans? What's the use case, benign or malicious? Well, we've seen that many different tokens were used in flash loans. So here on the x-axis you have the time scale. We start in January 2020. We measured until October 2020. And on the y-axis you can see the accumulative flash loan amount in US dollar. So keep in mind this is a log scale. So these amounts have been growing quite a bit within the last year. The most popular token that was lent out is DAI, a stablecoin from MakerDAO. The second, I think, is Ether or USDC, also a stablecoin USDC, and Ether, the base currency of the Ethereum blockchain. Okay. So what we've identified as use cases are, so the biggest use case that seems to be quite prominent is arbitrage. Arbitrage between different on-chain exchanges. So for instance, if you have, you have Uniswap, which is an on-chain so-called automated market maker exchange, and then you have SushiSwap, which is a fork of Uniswap. So they both operate under the same mathematical models. They have the same markets, but they need to be synchronized, right? Because if Philip is doing a trade on Uniswap, then he's changing the price on Uniswap, and somebody has to come in to change the price then on SushiSwap to equilibrate the markets, to make the markets more efficient. And this is what's called arbitrage. The beauty of flash loans is that you no longer need to hold assets to perform an atomic arbitrage between different on-chain exchanges like Uniswap and SushiSwap. So this is, as it appears, the most legit use case of flash loans. Flash loans were used as a tool in various numbers of attacks over the last year. Also this year, there have been, I think, a few in the beginning of the year. We'll discuss today more in detail price oracle manipulation. Technically, if you want to increase the trading volume of a coin that you like, you could use flash loans for wash trading. So you could borrow $1 billion, purchase your favorite token, sell it again, and pay back the flash loan plus interest. And then your trading volume of your favorite token just instantly rose to $1 billion. So that's a possibility. You could also do flash minting. I've seen, I think 2 days ago, there's wrapped Ether version 10 that was released, which allows to flash mint Ether. So you can just create a coin. You know, you have inflationary models like Ethereum, right? There's more Ether being mined every day. You have deflationary models like Bitcoin, where there's limited supply, or supposed to be limited supply. And then there's flash minting, where you, within one transaction, you create artificial tokens that are still, for example, Ether, but by the end of the transactions, you have to burn it again. So that's what's called flash minting. Not yet clear where this is useful and in what kind of sense this would be useful. So overall in 2020, DeFi, there were a few DeFi attacks, and over $100 million were lost. I wouldn't say that flash loans are the cause of those attacks. They're rather a tool used by the adversaries to actually carry out these attacks. But so flash loans are kind of a tool that is kind of a tool which displays that there is an issue, or that there are several issues with certain platforms. So to give you some example here, an arbitrage example. So we have a platform which is DYDX, which is granting flash loans, right? So in the first step, we can, for example, take 2 million USDC as a flash loan. Then the arbitrageur can exchange some of this USDC for DAI on the Curve Y market. And in the third step, he exchanges then this DAI that he got against USDC, right? Because the prices of USDC DAI are different on the Curve Y and the Curve SUSD market. So in step 4, the arbitrageur can then pay back its loan to DYDX plus 1 way, which is the fee. And in this particular example, the arbitrageur made a profit of about 16,000 US dollar. Right? This is actually an on-chain example. I'm not exactly sure which block this was, but this is not a fictionary example. It's an actual arbitrage which happened on-chain. Are there any questions so far? Okay, good. We also look at different at where these flash loans are interacting with, which DeFi platforms the flash loans are interacting with. And I think the most interesting insight is that if you look here very down there at the table, like on average, or the mean at least of the gas, of the consumed gas, so this is the transaction fees, is 1.4 million. The block gas limit on the Ethereum blockchain at the moment is 12.5 million. So that's quite a significant number for a single transaction. So this indicates that these flash loans, first of all, they probably interact with several contracts, making them expensive, and the operator of the transaction, of the flash loan transaction, probably pays a significant amount just to execute these particular flash loans. So let's dive into flash loan attacks. So what can go wrong if we give these powerful tools to adversaries? So there was the first BZX attack was a pump and arbitrage attack happening in February 2020. I just give you here the high-level overview. We will go in detail over the second attack. So I don't want to go here into the nitty-gritties of this attack. But the high level that you can take away is that the input that the adversary had to provide was only $130. So this was the cost to execute the transaction, for the transaction fees that he had to pay. And the return that the adversary got for this particular attack was 350,000 US dollar. Now, in our paper, and I will discuss this a bit later in the slides as well, we found that the adversary actually left money on the table. He could have gotten more than double, right? He could have gotten 830,000 US dollar if he would have chosen the optimal parameters to execute this particular attack. Let's jump into the second attack, which we will go through step by step.
Can I ask a quick question on
Of course.
the previous attack? So, I mean, these are, I mean, from the looks of your diagram, these attacks are quite complex, right? You need to do several steps. So, does that mean that people are building automated tools that that execute these attacks, or is there really somebody sitting there and is trying to figure out all of these steps to actually execute it then and implement it?
I believe, and our analyzers actually suggest that this is manual work.
Okay.
The reason I say this is because there are two reasons actually. So the first is the parameters are not optimal, but okay, sure you could have a tool that just finds the path in the graph, right, without finding the optimal parameters. But the attacks are not optimal. But the second observation is that these attacks, so we actually have a tool that allows to find these now in an automated way. And the BZX attack, I'm actually not sure whether it's this one or the second, was exploitable for 69 days.
Okay.
And I suppose it wouldn't be exploitable for 2 months if they were using automated tools.
Right. Yeah.
That's
that
why
makes sense.
I would conclude that they are probably doing manual work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're totally right. I mean, to execute this attack, you actually need to know the inner workings of BZX very well. You have to understand DYDX. You have to understand compound. You need to understand Uniswap and Kyber. So this is and the challenge is that these protocols are also evolving over time very quickly, right? So it's quite a challenge to exploit these. So these are quite smart people, or a smart individual. Who knows? All right. So let's jump into the second attack, the Oracle manipulation attack. So we have an adversary. The adversary takes a flash loan, and he takes the flash loan from BZX. So it's also offering flash loans, and he takes 7,500 ether. Now, with this 7,500 ether, he takes a part of it, 540 ether, and he purchases on Uniswap. He purchases SUSD. It's a stablecoin. It's a US dollar stablecoin. Now, what's maybe important is he has an average exchange rate of 170 US dollar. After this trade, the price of SUSD on the Uniswap market actually went down to 106 SUSD. That is because if we go back the slide before here, you can see that this is the amount of liquidity within Uniswap. So before the trade, you have 880 ether in the pool, in the liquidity pool of Uniswap. And after the trade, you have 1,420 ether within the Uniswap pool. So you can see that the trade of 540 ether is quite significant with respect to the liquidity which is present within the Uniswap pool. So this is the first trade. The second trade is with the Kyber reserve. It's basically also an exchange. And here the Kyber reserve actually had almost 0 ether, and after the trade has 360 ether. Good. So far, all that the adversary did was to take like less than 1,000 ether, right, and just buy SUS dollar on these two exchanges. So why would he do that, right? I will explain in a bit why, but before that, there's one more step, and this is a trade with synthetics. So here he uses 3,500 ether to purchase almost 1 million SUS dollar. And the synthetics market is quite a different exchange from Uniswap and Kyber, because there's no slippage, meaning there's no price change for an arbitrary size trade that you do. So here in step 4, you can see below here, the price is quite high. So you get 270 SUS dollar almost per ether. So at this point in time, right, I mean, we are within one flash loan attack. At this point in time, you can see there's a huge discrepancy between the prices of Uniswap, Kyber, and synthetics. Now, to conclude the attack, the adversary then collateralizes the 1.1 million US dollar that he purchased so far within BCX to loan out 6,800 Ether. And I have, so this here, the blue dotted line indicates that the BZX exchange is using the Uniswap market and the Kyber reserve as a price oracle. And that's why this attack is also called an oracle manipulation. So in essence, this exchange here, or I mean this lending platform BZX, right, uses external price oracles that were manipulated, and hence it pays out too much Ether to the adversary. So the adversary ends up with 9,800 Ether. And remember, initially he lent out only 7,500. So he's paying back the 7,500 because he doesn't want his transaction to fail, right? He wants to pay back the loan and run away with 2,800 Ether, 2,300 Ether. Okay. Any questions on this attack? Okay. There are quite a few steps involved, but yeah, the high level is there's an on-chain price oracle. It was manipulated before lending out assets at a wrong price then. Right? This is the high level attack. So now let's jump into the optimization framework. So what we did is we basically formulated the DeFi actions in models. So the constant product automated market maker, which is Uniswap, can be expressed, for example, in this equation. Then we constructed a constraint optimization problem based on the attack vector. I will show this in the next slide. And we then try to maximize the profit. That's the objective of the attack. We also fetch the on-chain state of the real blockchain, right, of the Ethereum blockchain, so that we have the faithful execution of the attack and also of the optimized attack. So we concretely validated the optimal attack parameters that we found. So here on the right side, you can see this in this figure. We basically take the DeFi models, an attack vector, and then a DeFi on-chain state, and we get the optimal parameters and the optimal revenue then. So for the BZX attack 2, for the attack that we just looked into in depth, this would look basically something like this. So at the beginning, in step 1, you borrow some Ether. In step 6, you repay that Ether, right? So this is the flash loan part. And then step 2, 3, 4, and 5 are the attack parts. So you have two conversions. Three conversions. So 2, 3, 4 are conversions, right, from Ether to SUS dollar. And then step 5 is where you collateralize SUSD to borrow some Ether. So that's the equation. That's the constraint here, right? We want P1 plus P2 plus P3 to be smaller than the total supply of money that we have, because P1, P2, P3 is the Ether that we're having. And that's basically what we resolve. So to find the optimal parameters, we use this SLSQP library from SciPy on a regular standard machine, and then we validated the parameters with concrete execution on the real blockchain state. So we forked the chain at the block before the attack, and then executed the attack on our private chain. Cool. I hope this was understandable. The full details are in the paper that were also presented this week at FC, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot, Arthur. Yeah, if anybody has questions, please go ahead.
Hello. Yes, I've got two questions. So first, can you get my microphone? Oh, there it is. So first question is, so what prevents someone from just spying on the network and just front running any of the attacks? that you could create?
Nothing. That's fully correct. So what can happen is you can listen on the peer-to-peer network for so-called unconfirmed transactions or transactions that go into the memory pool, and you can replay them by replacing an adversary address with your own address and trying to reap the revenue. That's possible. We've shown this actually in a paper which is called quantifying blockchain extractable value. We put on archive in January.
So the second question was, if this is so good and such an easy way to make money, why don't you just do it?
I mean, my job is doing research, and so I like my job.
And then is all your source code online, and will you be publishing it?
We haven't open sourced the code for this particular attack, but I'm not sure it would be very helpful either, because it just applies to this particular case, right? So you can't generalize it for other attacks.
So you mentioned that these attacks happened in like early 2020, right?
Yeah.
So did the exchanges and the market makers and so on, did they implement any countermeasures to prevent these kind of attacks, or what's the state of the art there?
Yes. So if you look at the attack here, there was Synthetics was involved, right? So nowadays, Synthetics has a 3-minute cooldown period for doing a swap, because I suppose because they also want to avoid this type of attacks. Because Synthetics is a special type of exchange where you can literally exchange any amount that you want at the fixed price, right? Which is like, I mean, it's amazing that this exists, because it doesn't exist in the traditional finance or in the traditional economy. So I suppose Synthetics introduced this partially also because of these type of manipulations. In general, it seems that this is the first thing. The second observation is this one here, that the BZX platform used Uniswap and Kyber as a price oracle. This was probably I mean, it was the price was manipulable. I think Uniswap version 2 introduced a time-weighted average price now to report as a price oracle. So I mean, a single manipulation within one transaction wouldn't necessarily cause the price oracle to shift that much, I suppose, but I haven't looked into the code yet or validated this, so please take it with a grain of salt. But I suppose so. Yeah. So these are the two countermeasures I can think of right now. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. So any further questions for Arthur?
Hi. Yeah, just a quick question on. So we've seen that flash loans are obviously very useful for sort of removing capital constraints for these types of attacks. Do you think that we will see any further additional, I guess, more legitimate use cases for flash loans outside of arbitrage? Because I haven't really thought of any outside of that, but just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
I have a hard time coming up with others either. It's a good question, Josh. I think arbitrage is probably so far the only legit use case. Yeah.
Yeah, that was sort of my thoughts too. I then guess because there's sort of this debate on, should we have allowed flash loans to exist? Do you feel it's been a net gain or a net loss to the ecosystem? Like in some ways, it sort of embraces this anti-fragile idea, right? But some people think that it's not worth it.
I mean, what I can do is I can compare the traditional exchanges with on-chain exchanges.
Right.
So the traditional exchanges operate mostly either over the counter or order book based. Then an order book on-chain doesn't really work. I mean, this was tried before, right? There were exchanges and they're not very efficient. So that's why we got this automated market maker model from Uniswap. Now, this AMM market, this AMM model has the drawback that somebody needs to go in to equilibrate the prices, right? Because you don't have the orders that are automatically adjusting. You don't have a market maker that automatically adjusts the price. So I feel, but this is more like an intuition, that the AMM model would not work that well without flash loans, because flash loans, you don't have the risk-free arbitrage. And hence the markets would be less efficient and not be able to compete with the traditional financial exchanges.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
Okay, I have to be careful by saying risk-free arbitrage. It is quite risky to do the arbitrage because you if you just lose, you have to pay gas fees, right, or for failed transaction. So
yeah,
so not to think that there's infinite money to be made here. It's not good.
All right. Yeah. Any further questions? Well, if not, then I would say, yeah, let's wrap up. Arthur, thanks again for coming. This was really a nice and interesting talk.
Thanks a lot for very good questions.
Yeah, we look forward to see more of your DeFi flash loan attack papers. Okay, yeah. So thanks everyone, and we hope to see you back again in the next session.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
You too. Thanks. Bye.